In the last video, we talked about how safety is really the root of all relationship issues that you can possibly face, and how every single problem in a relationship goes back to some sort of safety issue. And if you fix a safety issue, you pretty much allow yourself to fix all other issues in the relationship. So if you missed that video, go ahead and check that video out because that video was a true banger, as you young kids say. The next question that a lot of you might have would be, but what if I've done everything to make her feel safe, like this guy here? Basically, he's saying that he's done everything he can, but his relationship, unlike a lot of my clients, my 6,000 plus clients that I've enrolled, is different. It's of a different situation than what he's facing. So what if he's done everything, but nothing seems to be working? And I hear a lot of you saying that you have tried everything too. And I don't doubt that you have tried a lot. But what if I told you that the things that a lot of people try to create safety is actually running in the wrong direction? And the best way to understand this is almost like falling asleep. The harder you try to fall asleep, the less likely it is that you are to fall asleep, because again, safety is a falling outcome. And so, that person who's trying very hard to fall asleep, he's going to say, I have tried everything. I have done everything to try to fall asleep, but I'm not falling asleep. But what if you trying to fall asleep is the very problem in the first place? And you trying to fall asleep is actually you running faster in the wrong direction. Safety is perhaps the most misunderstood topic that I usually talk about. A lot of people understand conceptually what safety is, but a lot of people, even after understanding it conceptually, they struggle to create it. And I imagine the number of people who are about to walk away from a relationship that could have had a lot of great potential, or walking away from something amazing like I almost did, like a lot of my clients did as well. And so again, a lot of people think that saving relationships is so complicated, so difficult, but let me show you just how easy it is. And I want to make sure that you're not one of these people running in the wrong direction. So again, if you want no BS content that you need for permanent reconciliation and avoid short-term, these BS reconciliations, consider subscribing and click the bell button as well. And if you're already subscribed, just know that ever since I switched to this new style of videos where it's more in-depth, longer, we're getting a lot less money from people, but we're getting a lot more results than ever before in our program, but also outside of the program as well for people who haven't even enrolled yet. So if you've already subscribed, I encourage you to vote with your subscription, vote with your likes, vote with your comments. Your likes, your comments, your subscription really goes a long way in helping us spread this word to more and more people. And again, guys, I'm not doing this for the money, right? If I was doing this for the money, I would be optimizing this for the algorithm and not really for just teaching you what people actually need to hear. And so let me start by saying that I can tell that this is going to be a big issue, because if you look at a lot of my comments on my videos, people always ask me about the frameworks, right? Frameworks, can you teach me more about the frameworks, etc.? And this shows a lot about where people's mindsets are at. And the mistake that you might think often is that safety is created by what you do and say. So you say, for example, I did XYZ. I said XYZ. I tried creating safety in this way. I wrote that letter. I said this promise. I said that to her. I said to her that she can feel safe. But to be honest, what you do, what you say, the frameworks is actually, like, if I can put a percentage to it, it's like 1 to 5% of the game. And like I say to a lot of my clients, when you master your frameworks, that is like you mastering planting seeds. But that's it. You're just planting seeds. But the harvest only comes when you can nurture and you can water your seeds properly over time, over the long periods and consistently. And that can actually backfire, and can actually backfire hard on you if you're not doing it properly, if you cannot back it up with real changes. And so there's this guy, his name is John Wooden. I don't really know who he is, but he says something very insightful, which is that the true test of a man's character is what he does when no one's watching. But let's modify this a bit. Okay, this is Jeff's quote. The true test of a man's character is what he does when he thinks no one's watching, or during what he thinks are inconsequential moments. So what does that mean? For me, for example, about in the beginning of January of this year, I got COVID and flu A at the same time. And I was feeling like crap, right? And the first day that I had COVID, my wife went to Los Angeles to visit her parents. And on the first day I had COVID, my wife saw just how debilitated I was, how I couldn't even get out of my bedroom. I couldn't even see light. I had to stay in the darkness, like cuddled, because all my body was in chills. I was aching all over. And in that first day, she went to Los Angeles. And for the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years, I've been telling my wife, I love what I do. I love my processes. No matter what happens, I will never abandon my processes. And after the trip, she told me that she was using the camera that we have in our house and she was watching what I was doing when I was having COVID. And when she saw the camera, she was seeing that I was still doing my work. I was still doing my meditation. I was still doing my internal work that we teach in the program as well, my auto suggestions, my SOC. I was doing a lot of these exercises that I teach you guys in the program. And when she came back, she said to me, you know what, Jeff? You didn't know this, but I was checking you out on the camera and I see you doing the work. And now I know you've been telling me for the last 2 to 3 years that you love doing your work. I never really believed it until I saw that you were still doing that stuff, even when you were barely functioning with COVID and flu A. And that moment, really, when I thought she wasn't watching, when I thought no one was watching, was the moment that built the most trust. And so what I tell my clients often is, imagine after you plant these seeds that there's now a camera following you 24/7. And imagine that the people that you're trying to build trust with, you're trying to build safety with, you're trying to prove your changes to, has access to the footage of that camera. And they're able to see random moments of that, reality show. Would what they see be congruent with what you have promised? What they see create trust. What they see create safety. And a lot of you thinking about this may think like, okay, that seems very unfair. That seems very unrealistic. Like, how can I live my life thinking that there's a 24/7 camera following me around, right? Where's the privacy here? But if you look back into your own life, you realize that you kind of do the same thing as well. When you're about to decide who to do business with, who to invest in, for example, what kind of people, and whether you can trust the person you're having a relationship with, you are going to naturally see what they do during the unplanned moments, during the unexpected moments, during the moments when shit really hits the fan, or during moments when they think it's inconsequential. And so think about your relationships and think about what leads you to be able to trust and feel safe with someone. You will realize that you do the same thing. Now, if you do the same thing with things that are less consequential or even smaller matters, think about, why wouldn't your partner expect this of you when we're talking about the one decision that has the highest factor in determining the happiness or the sadness of your whole life, right? I mean, she only has one life and she's basically deciding, do I want to spend my one and only life with this person or not forever and not look elsewhere? So of course, she's going to want to see a lot more evidence of what you do during inconsequential moments in order to feel safe and feel that trust for you. And you would do the exact same thing. And if you think this is unrealistic, this whole camera 24/7 thing, again, it's because you're approaching this all wrong. So let me explain it this way, okay? And this is going to go into the importance of identity-based changes. So we always say in our program and in many of our videos already, amateurs practice until they can get it right once. Masters practice something until they can't get it wrong anymore, right? And when you buy a program that teaches you how to write letters, how to have one conversation and make it successful, that is like an amateur trying to practice a move until they can get it right, just one move. But they're not practicing on how they can improvise and make up moves and pivot along the way, right? And this kind of mastery isn't really going to move the needle. In fact, it can be harmful. A great example of this is I get so many people who they promise to their partner, to me, right, via email, via verbally, that says, I will do the work no matter what, regardless of what my partner says. And then the next day, their partner says, hey, if you join this program, I'm going to divorce you. Or if you join this program, we're not getting back together again. And instantly, within 24 hours, they go from, I'll do anything to, oh, here's one reason I won't do it, right? But for my clients and myself, and the secret to our success is that we master the skills until not just we can get it right, but until we can't get it wrong. We're getting things right even when we're not trying. And a lot of you may think this sounds very difficult, right? So I want to give you a quick analogy here. So I'm sure in school, they told you to do the, hey, you got all these building blocks, try to build the tallest tower you can challenge, right? So let's pretend we have two teams, right? The first team starts building it like this right away. Boom, they stack it and they go really high, really fast, right? And maybe for the first part of the challenge, it really looks like this between the two teams. So initially, right, this team because they're focused on short-term tactics. They're not focused on building solid foundations. They're just focused on very short-term tactics. They look at this and they go, look at their team and they go, ha ha, you're so slow, right? But then after a while, this team, because they haven't built the solid foundations, they start to not be able to take on more blocks. So let's say they take on more blocks here and then the whole thing tumbles. So to rebuild it to here again, they put this one and it tumbles again and it tumbles again. There is a ceiling of how high they can go. But then if you look at this guy, right? Yes, it's slow at first. Yes, they have to feel like there is this sense of mockery or judgment from the other side, but eventually they're going to go higher, right? Eventually they're going to go higher. And then once they go higher, these guys will look at this, they try to put another block in, it crumbles, they panic because now they have nothing, they build it back up again. By this time, these guys will be up here and they panic even more. And so this is what a lot of people face when they are trying to take the shortcuts of not having the identity-based changes. If you're just trying to focus on short-term stuff, focus on tactical stuff, is that yes, in the beginning, you're gonna feel like you're going somewhere. When you have this one conversation right, when you try to have a conversation with your wife and you stop divorce right away, you're gonna feel this notion that you're doing something. But you can only get so far with that, right? So here, these guys, at the end of the challenge, they're gonna be exhausted, but their tower is never gonna be taller than this. These guys are equally exhausted, but their tower is gonna be so high. You see? So this is again the difference between, yes, in the short term, it can seem like we're not making progress if you're focusing on identity-based changes, but in the long term, you're gonna feel this hockey stick effect going. And this approach, you're gonna feel like you're moving fast in the beginning, but really at the end of the day, you're gonna be running around in circles over and over and over and over again. And before you know it, you're gonna be left behind by the people actually doing identity-based changes. So we'll show you a bit how to create this identity-based changes, but I want to also show you how this also solves a lot of other problems that people have with creating safety. So another problem that people have with creating safety is that we forget that safety is actually a falling outcome, not a striving outcome. So basically, there are two kinds of outcomes we get in life. Think about lifting weights, right? The more willpower you exert, the more weight you can lift. This is what we call a striving outcome, where there's a one-to-one or a positive correlation between willpower and getting the outcome. But then there's other things like sleep, where the more willpower you exert to try to fall asleep, the less likely you are to fall asleep. There's an inverse correlation between willpower there and getting the outcome. And love is very much a falling outcome. They call it falling in love for a reason. And so with safety. Safety is something that people fall into, not people strive towards. And so a lot of people, they use the striving approach to create safety. And so they focus on having some key conversations, conjuring up key actions that can create that safety. But again, safety is like sleep, right? It's a falling thing. The more you strive for safety, the less it gets. It's like telling someone, hey, you can feel safe with me, by imposing that you can feel safe with me, right? You doing that is actually going to make them feel less safe. And the only way to have this kind of falling outcome is not to do because you want to have, right? We always look at this be, do, have cycle. So it's not to do because you want to have. But the best way to create falling outcomes is to be because I am, because you are, right? So for example, I want to calm myself down because I want to sleep. That actually creates more anxiety. You want to learn to do because you are. So you just want to be calm. Don't try to have calmness, try to be calm. And so the same thing for safety. Stop trying to create safety. Just be that beacon of safety. And if you have managed to make safety into your identity, it makes it easier for you to do because you are that beacon of safety. Another example of this is safety as a process, not as a destination. So the best way to think about this is almost like balancing, right? So you think about when you're balancing on something, right? When you're balancing, what do? You balance yourself. What happens when you are already balanced? You still balance yourself. In fact, when you think I'm balanced now, and so I stop balancing, that's when you fall, right? And so balance is a process. Balance is not a destination. It's not an outcome. The same thing, safety is a process. It's not an outcome. So a lot of people come to programs and they say, okay, my relationship is off balance right now. I want the help of a coach to help me balance it back again. But then that's it, right? It's just balancing it back again. So because once you balance it, now there's a whole other battle of like, once your balance is to keep yourself balanced, you need to keep balancing. And that's not going to work, which is why a lot of fake reconciliations happen, because yes, it gets them to the balance portion, but because they don't know how to balance per se, they fall down again. And so my clients learn to do because they are. And so they understand things like that entropy is a fact of life, and they love the process of finding misunderstandings, for example. They love the process of leaning into misunderstandings. They love the process of aligning on misunderstandings. Another one is around the misconception of what it means to give safety versus what it means to receive safety. Because when people go into my program, I think a lot of people understand that I'm teaching them how to give safety to their partner. But then the next question that comes up is always like, well, what about the safety she's creating for me? Right? So think about it like this. Let's say you are two pillars together in a relationship, right? If you say the goal with our program is that for you to become a beacon of safety yourself, so basically you are becoming a very strong and very upright, very firmly planted plank, right? Which your partner can then lean on. That's a picture of safety right here. But when you start to go reverse this and you start to say, well, I will give my partner safety if she gives me safety. So I will let my partner lean on me if I can lean on her, kind of thing. Then you create this really weird dynamic where it's sort of like a fragile state here. Like this is like a house of cards that can topple at any time. This one will topple at any time, kind of thing. And a lot of people may be fearing, looking at this, going like, okay, so if I'm just becoming this strong pillar and I'm allowing my partner to lean on me like this, will I become kind of a punching bag? Will it become kind of like a wet cloth that's just like freaking taken advantage of? No, it hasn't really happened. In our 6,000 cases, we haven't never seen once a case where it does this. Because what happens is when you give safety to your partner, you reduce the number of the reasons for self-preservation. And when you reduce the reasons for self-preservation, you will see that the toxic behavior goes away, which makes it easier for you to give more safety. And when you give more safety, that improves things on our hand too. So it's almost like you guys are propping yourself up, props your partner up, your partner propping herself up, then props yourself up, and it starts this very fortuitous cycle. But if you do this, where you point to each other and say, well, I'll start when you start, and then your partner says, well, I'll start when you start, nobody moves. In fact, you're just going to be looking at each other going like, you're not starting, and then you just walk away and you get all huffy and puffy and say, oh, she doesn't want to start, right? It's just a bad cycle there. So the basic premise is that when you are trying to create safety, try to become the beacon of safety, not to have the relationship, but because you are that beacon of safety. And once you can learn safety, how to create safety from that untethered state, from that more altruistic, from that more unconditional state, that is ironically when you can create safety. But as long as you're trying to create safety to have safety back, you ironically will never have that safety, right? The last thing is really thinking about safety as a performance. So in my own life, for example, I try to see myself as a professional safety pillar. Like that's what I do. That's what I'm best at. That is what I'm put on this earth to do, is like to create safety for my partner, for my employees, for my clients, and everyone I see around me, right? Now, there's a few other caveats here where safety sometimes is not always just being nice and being gentle all the time. It's not being a pushover, okay? But that's a topic for another video. But every part of my life, my diet, my exercise, my community, the media that I watch, my sleep, and everything around me is to allow me to become a better and better safety performer, right? So for example, I stop eating food 8 to 10 hours before I sleep, because I know that if I eat too soon before my bedtime, my resting heart rate goes up and I'm not going to sleep as well, right? If I don't sleep as well, I can't function as well the next day. But when I sleep well, my mind just becomes a lot calmer, a lot sharper. I became a lot more patient. I have a lot less mood swings, and I can give a lot more safety. I can perform well under pressure. I can perform well under duress, right? I can be more creative and so on. Sexually, I'm more functioning And so we have a healthy sex life when I have my sleep in order. My diet, same thing. I focus on a very vegan, very anti-inflammatory diet that allows me to just maximize and optimize my energy all day long. Right? My community, same thing. The people I surround myself with are all the people that inspire me, that makes me creative, that doesn't bring me down. There's no negative vibes, no low energy, no low vibration there. Media, same thing. So everything I do is to allow me to become a safety performer. And so with my clients, I allow them to see that safety is an everyday thing. Safety is a 24/7 thing. Safety is a beacon, and you do it because you want to be that. It changes the game completely, right? I mean, think about, for example, the number of times you've lost your temper. Maybe you didn't respond in a proper way. Maybe you didn't show your best self because you're tired, because you're sleepy, because the other parts of your life are not aligned to allowing you to be at your optimal state, right? Think about how much safety that destroys, and think about how much work and how much attention and how much drama that can create for the long term if you keep doing this. So, of course, the way to get these identity-based changes are very nuanced, but here are some of the basics that I teach my client. And it's a very simple, basic on its surface. So first, I want you to define what we call the becoming self. And so in our program, you'll see a whole section called Mastering Self-Evolution, and that's really defining your becoming self, defining who you want to become, defining what becoming that beacon of safety looks like, feels like, etc. And once you define that becoming self, stage 2 is to define the process of that becoming self. And when you define your becoming self too, you also want to remove a lot of the misconceptions people have about what it means to create safety. For example, a lot of people think that because the word safety sounds soft, they think that creating safety is like being a pushover. But then the next question I ask them is, okay, if you're trying to create safety and you're becoming a yes man, you become someone who's just like, oh yeah, whatever you want, whatever makes you feel safe, right? No opinions, never stand up for yourself, and so on. Can someone feel safe with a pushover? No, right? So creating safety is not being a pushover. It's actually a very balanced state that you get into. And it's also removing the subtle ways we destroy safety too. So again, when you define your becoming self, it's really not about the big audacious things you do to create safety. And we often think like the big audacious mistakes are the ones that destroy safety, but it's actually the tiny ones that we often aren't even aware that we did. The Freudian slips in a way that destroys safety. So getting all that clear, and we help you to do that in the program. Number 2 is define your process for the becoming self. So this is when we talk about things like untethering, right? Removing victim mindsets, learning the TTH, learning state of consciousness, how to quiet your mind, raising self-esteem, and so on and so on. So we have a series called the Internal Shift series, where you get an understanding of what are these processes to allow you to become the self to create that safety. And then the third step is really the untethering step. This is when we're trying to basically program your brain, program your mind into loving these processes intrinsically. And when you start to love this process intrinsically, you will become as a natural artifact of that. So for me, for example, when I'm untethering, whether I'm removing my VMs, doing my autosuggestions, quietening my mind, that for me, I love doing all that stuff, not because I want to have, but because I actually love doing these things. I actually feel amazing just doing the everyday things of that becoming self and these processes. And I'm enjoying it not because it leads to a having. I'm enjoying it because even when I have the having, I still do it. You know, there is a great quote by someone who says basically, the question to ask is not about what you will do if you knew you couldn't fail, but what will you do even if you failed? Think about that for a sec. What will you do even if you failed? And even if you're not getting the outcomes, will you still love and choose to do those things even when you're not getting the outcomes, even when you're in the midst of failure? And to be honest, even when I'm in the midst of failure, even during my roughest days, I would love doing these processes no matter what. And that's where untethering comes in, right? And stage 4 is really about creating awareness of any blind attachments that we have. So preventing these lateral movements and distractions from this core exercise right here. And this is why, if you look at a lot of the client stories that I have, a lot of them mention the importance of the community and how surrounding yourself with like-minded people, with people of certain standards, certain lifestyles, What it does is it changes your norms of what is acceptable and what is not. For me, for example, if I lose sight of my becoming self for maybe 10 minutes of the day, in my world, that is beyond normal. That is not normal, right? So for some people, though, you could lose your becoming self. You could lose your sense of self. You can have an identity crisis for like weeks, for months, for even years sometimes. And you might not never be able to wake up from it. Because again, if you surround yourself with people who don't really know what their becoming self is, who are not really living in this untethered lifestyle, you're going to look at your tethered lifestyle and not even bat an eye. You're like, this is normal. But if you surround yourself with people who say, hey, even when you're untethered, even when you're tethered for like a day, that's pretty bad already. You're never going to allow yourself to be tethered more than a day.
Hey everyone on YouTube, I just want to give you a brief overview of the community that Geoffrey is talking about. This is the group where everybody, once you become a member, goes to share their work with each other and continue to grow as a group where we have that internal support for each other. So this is the welcome page. The community home is where most members spend most of their time. On this page, it's where members will share all of their different wins, their realizations, the work that they're working on currently, videos that they need us to critique. They'll share their reconciliations, their journeys, all that information so that you're constantly getting an update of where you're at and what you're working on. In our announcement page, we talk about anything that's very important that's happening. We have sparring channels for people to work on the TTH and to work on the frameworks with each other. We also have upcoming live calls. So this is where any of our group calls will be at. Lets you know when the group call is going to be and gives people access to join it directly. And then we also have different resources. So important coaching calls, important looms, great examples, things that people can look at. So resources for people to use inside the community itself. So that's a brief overview of our community.
I don't really want to like show people's names for privacy reasons, but you saw a little bit about our platform and our community there, and you can see some of the activity that I showed before. But here's the idea behind this. So basically, what we want to do is to repeat this and keep raising the tides one at a time. So for example, if these are the processes that gets me to my becoming self, I want to raise this, then pick the lowest level, raise this, pick the lowest level, raise this, raise this, raise this, and repeat that. Now this becomes the lowest level, I want to raise that. Now this becomes the lowest level, I'll raise that. This becomes the lowest level, I'll raise that. And you keep raising it. And as you keep raising it, imagine there is an average line here that tracks your intrinsic value of who you are. That line you can tell is going up, is going up, is going up, is going up, is going up. And as this goes up, you will find that the higher this goes, the more outcomes will fall to you, right? And that's what happened to my clients, right? All they do is they focus on raising all these dots, raising all their processes. And before they know it, the outcomes come to them. And so if you watch a lot of my client interviews, a lot of them are just very focused on just focusing on raising these processes and working on these processes. And they always say at the end of the interview, they'll always say, it was faster than I thought. It was way quicker than I thought. It was way higher than I thought. It was way better than I thought. We got there faster than I thought. And instead of asking, are we there yet? They say, oh, we're here, right? And that's a key difference between making this about identity-based changes versus a tactical-based changes. But if you work on the frameworks first, without working on the internal shifts, whatever you do will seem forced, will seem ingenuine, will seem very difficult. And often people can't even think of what to say and what to do because they haven't really changed their identity yet. And again, a lot of people will say, this sounds like too fucking damn hard. Again, relax, right? Because again, right, you are already exerting a lot of work. A lot of you are here watching YouTube videos, watching content, buying programs, because you are trying to dedicate your energy into this, into fixing your relationship, into bettering yourself, right? And so if you're going to spend 100 units of energy, right, 100 moves, will you spend 100 moves going like building it here, right? And then you want to build one more, this crumbles again, so you waste 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more units of energy and 6 units to crumble it back down again and waste another 6. Like, at the end of the 100 units of energy, you're never going to get high as this, right? But if you spend it doing this way, yes, it's slow at first, but with the same 100 units of energy, you can go a lot faster, you can go a lot higher, So think long term here, guys, right? So I hope that was helpful, guys, in allowing you to understand the key difference in approach on why sometimes people think saving relationships is so hard because they're trying it this way, right? But if it's hard for you, realize that you're probably trying the wrong way. And you're not trying it by changing your identity first, by focusing on identity-based changes. And you're focused on learning tactics first. And so if you want to go deeper into understanding what these identity-based changes are and getting a 10,000-foot view of it, you are free to join me in my masterclass in the 5 proven steps to rebuilding your relationship from the ground up. And in that masterclass, I'll teach you the same system that I showed all my clients who went from 0 to 100 that you see in our playlist and how they got there. All right. So if you want to join my masterclass and you want to apply for the program as well, you can do so at the end of the masterclass. So if you want to sign up, I'll leave the link up above or down below as well. But for now, guys, I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.